Welcome to another Friday. I'm Dan Van Zalen. This is Speaking for Him with your host, Andrew Gommenson.
It's great to be with you, Dan, and we are ready to give you yet another movie review. I like to give these quality Christian movies a good review, and so hopefully you will go out and see the movie and support it because we want people to continue to make good Christian movies. I'm especially excited about this one because it's the first executive producer credit for one Mr. Tim Tebow. Tim is a very polarizing character. Either you love him or you hate him. There's very little in between. I happen to be on the love him side of things. He's very bold in his faith, and
he's also a bit of a silly character.
Well, he can be a little bit silly, but he does, he goes for what he goes for, with a passion and a gusto. I don't know if you've heard, but he does Night to Shine proms for people with special needs, which I think is totally awesome. If I ever got the chance to interview Tim, which would be awesome, I think that would be one of the main topics I would want to ask him about how he got started in that. Uh-huh. A few years ago, he made headlines because he and his mom were in a pro-life Super Bowl ad for Focus on the Family, where they talked about his story, where his mom had pregnancy complications when she was pregnant with him. He was her fifth child, and she was urged to abort. She was overseas, I believe in the Philippines, as a missionary, and they urged her to abort. She refused, and then Tim Tebow only went on to be a college football star and win the Heisman and lead the Broncos to the playoffs in one of his few NFL seasons, and now he plays in the minor leagues for the Mets. So the guy is very versatile, and now he's an executive producer in the movies with Run the Race. So we'll get into more of a discussion about that, but first, why don't you give us our quote of the day?
But of course. Against the backdrop of high school football and track, the two brothers in a small southern town faced escalating problems with two different worldviews, straining, but ultimately strengthening, the bonds of brotherhood. IMDb.
All right, and now, before I get into the meat of our discussion, we're going to hear a trailer for the movie Run the Race.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm the running back at Bessemer.
I don't date football players.
I'm going to convert you.
I heard he scored 5 times.
Yeah, it's almost 6.
Tell your brother I said hey.
Thank you, Pastor. Cover for me. It's getting old. Thank you, man. Love ya.
You on somebody's radar, son.
It's not a big deal. It's just a letter saying that there's interest in...
Shut up.
Yeah, it's a big deal, dude. I'm gonna get that scholarship. I'm gonna get us out of here.
I don't want to end up like Dad.
Hey, you guys mind if I join you?
Yeah, lost my appetite.
We're family.
We're family. You're a drunk who left us after our mom died. Oh, you were as good at football. What did you say?
Runs in the family, right? So this thing about football season? Chance of scholarship for this boy. Track season's around the corner. They give scholarships for track.
I can do this. I've got nothing to lose and a scholarship to gain. And you're gonna come with me wherever I go.
I don't need your help with my kids.
Your boys don't need a coach. They need a dad. You're gonna look up one day and they will have moved on.
Dave, you're good, bud. It's all a part of his plan, right?
You're not the first person to wrestle with his faith.
Trust him. He's going to meet you wherever you're at.
Really? It's that simple?
I know life can be confusing. It's full of ups and downs.
Why is this so hard?
I believe in the plan, and I believe in you.
God does love you. He loves you like crazy.
All right, and there you have the trailer for Run the Race. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised at the depth of this movie. I know we've had various conversations through the years on this show about how some Christian podcasts are all about the preachiness of the message and not as much about quality or good acting or any of those type of things. But I think, Dan, that you will find if you take the time to watch Run the Race that it is pleasantly deep. I mean, there are some quality issues. Like, I think, you could make the case that Steven Spielberg can still make a higher production quality.
He also has a lot more experience
than what they did. But I really was blessed by the depth of the story, and it has some twists and turns, which I will not disclose because I want you to go and watch it and find out about the story. But why don't you give us some of the discussion questions so that we can talk a little bit more about this film.
Alrighty then. So, what are some positive things about this movie?
Okay, well, in the summary that we read before the podcast, as the podcast was beginning on IMDb, it talked about brotherhood, and that really is the central focus of this film. The brothers are there for each other. I think, and I'll probably mention this on multiple occasions throughout this episode, because my brother and I were talking about it, and we both kind of said that there are several spots in the movie where you wish that they had extrapolated a little bit more. And what I mean by that in layman's terms is that they would expand on it and say, why are we here? Like, for instance, you don't know which brother's the older, which is not essential, but it just makes you wonder. There's kind of a slight allusion to the fact that they might be twins, but you're not sure about that. Even though it takes place around high school sports, they never they never show the high school hallway. They're never going to and from a class. And so there's just some background information that would have been nice to know, had you watched the movie. Now, some movies are turned into some pretty neat novelizations, so I'm interested to see if Run the Race gets that treatment or not. But, positively, I felt like it was a good brother, movie. They supported one another. They both had their struggles, one of them spiritually, and the other one physically. And so they were there for each other to kind of fill each other's gaps and help them deal with the adversity they were facing. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a very positive message.
All right. So now then, what are some of the negatives?
Some of the negatives, well, production wise, I kind of talked about them a little bit. I think, there could have been, like, for instance, their dad isn't in their life. He kind of ran out on them when their mom died. And I think there could have been a little bit more backstory as to that horrific event and why, their mom left, why their dad was driven to leave because the mom died. I mean, obviously that's a traumatic event, but it's something else entirely to leave your kids in the care of someone else while you exit the situation because of your wife's death. Uh-huh. So I think that we would have been better served to hear a little bit more about that. And then just, I'm not sure of, the feasibility of one of the storylines, and I'm not going to get into that because it's kind of in a sense, a major plot point, but I will just say that it made me wonder if what happened on the film could happen. Uh-huh. Just one minor plot point. So, just wanted to put that out there.
All right, then. What is your favorite character?
Okay, my favorite character in this is actually, I believe they call her either Nini or Nana. She's their godmother, and it appears basically raised them when their father walked out. and she's always encouraging them, always trying to make sure that they're doing the right thing. That was another thing that was kind of weird about this movie is seems like they both work at a convenience type store. But the only times they ever showed the store was either after hours or just really late hours when there was basically no one in the store. So that was kind of weird. But, so I think she was my favorite character. She was just encouraging. And she encouraged the one brother who was struggling spiritually that even though things were going negatively and they seem to all be going bad, that God still cares about you. And I think that's an important message for us all.
All right, then. What is your least favorite character?
I actually, their dad was, but then he did a turnaround. He did a 180 and really tried to become the dad that he was supposed to be all along. So I think overall I don't have a least favorite character because he would have been, but there's a good redemption story there.
Nice. What do you think is the biggest lesson you took away from this film?
I think the biggest lesson that I took away from this film is about sacrifice, sacrificing for one another, trying to do what's best for one another. What happens in a nutshell is I can say this. The one brother is a football star. He's starting to get colleges paying attention to him. I'm guessing it's their senior season. One reason why it seems like they're twins, even though they didn't say it, was because it seemed like they were both, he was trying to get a scholarship to get them both out of their rinky-dink small town. So he gets injured doing something stupid during his senior year, has to stop playing football, and then his brother decides, hey, I'm going to run track. And he gets cleared to run track, even though it takes a lot of toll on him physically. And so he basically has this great season, and he has a chance to compete for a state track championship and a possible scholarship himself. So basically it talks about both football and track, hence the name Run the Race. And I like I said, I really liked it. I think the biggest lesson is kind of summed up in the verse, a greater love has no man than this, than that he laid down his life for his friends. Because they were both there for each other. The one brother tried to protect the other brother from his dad, and the other brother who was more forgiving of his dad tried to get reconciliation between the second brother and the dad. So they were both trying to look out for the best interest of the other, even though they saw things differently.
All right. How would you rate this film from 1 football to 5 footballs?
Okay, I'm going to give this film 3.5 footballs. And the reason it wasn't 4 or 5 is because of some of the things I talked about earlier, where, obviously you can only tell so much of a story in an 1.5 to 2 hour film. And that's always the challenge. It seems like either you're telling a story of like a 24-hour book in a 2-hour period, or you take a 10-minute children's book and you stretch it to 2 hours for the film, and it doesn't work very well either way.
Yeah, so, you have to show a lot rather than tell a lot.
So it just depends how things are going to go. And I think this was, like I said, I think this was an original motion picture. I don't think it was based on anything, but it would have been nice if they would have filled in a little bit of the background a little bit more. So,
all right. Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I really like this film. Like I said, I thought it hit a depth that I wasn't expecting. Even the spiritual journey, like, you think that sometimes in Christian films, the spiritual journey, everything gets buttoned up so nicely, and the person that needs spiritual revival gets it, and everything works out for them. That's one of the biggest criticisms of some Christian films. If you do everything right, everything will work out for you in this life. And this film kind of shows that that's not necessarily the case. So I kind of like that about it because it's more real world type stuff. And so I really recommend that you see Run the Race. As of right now, it's still in theaters, and I want to make sure that if it's still in theaters when you hear it, when you hear this podcast, that you go out and see it. If it's not, it will be on DVD shortly. I'm fairly certain. So I will try to make sure that I alert you when that DVD is available, whether it's in this blog post, the blog post for this podcast, or whether it's on a future Speaking for Him Facebook post. Keep your eye out for that, because I will definitely let you know, because it's good to support this, and I hope they make more movies like it. All right, well, that's about all I have time for today, but I thank you for taking time to listen to the Speaking for Him podcast. Please make sure that you're letting other people know about it. It's totally free to download from the website, or you can get on iTunes on your iPhone and subscribe to it there. And you can contact us with the contact information that will roll at the end of the show. So if you want to go on our Facebook page at facebook.com/speaking for him, let us know what you thought of this movie, and we will be glad to comment on it. We may even use comments that you make in a future show. So that's all I have for today. Have a great weekend and keep serving the best of masters.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Your host has been Andrew Gomison, founder of Speaking for Him. For more information on today's show and to leave us comments and voicemails, visit speakingforhim.blogspot.com. You can find Andrew's ministry at speakingforhim.com. That's speaking, 4, HIM. You can also interact with us at facebook.com/speakingforhim and on Twitter @speakingforhim. And when you look for us on iTunes and Stitcher, let us know what you think of the podcast by leaving a rating and review.